Okay, so abnormal psychology. I want to start off by saying that this is a science class. And even though psychology is one of the soft sciences, it's a little bit vague at times, it's not always the clearest thing, it's definitely science. And this is one of the things you'll be reading about this week. When you look at the difference between some of the early approaches to abnormal psychology, things like the humors and trephination and various ideas that really have to do with spiritualism and superstition rather than scientific methods, you're going to find that there's some really key differences in how things are practiced today. Now, trephination, I don't know how many of you have read the text yet, but trephination is the approach that when there are problems in the mind, it's because there's something building up inside the head. And that the best approach is to drill a hole in the head to let it out. There are still people who believe in this today, but they're not nearly as common. It used to be based around spirits and evil entities that needed to escape. Nowadays, there are people who believe it actually is used in some small extent. Every once in a while, I mean, in a medical sense, in a scientific sense, every once in a while you'll hear of a case where they've had to drill a small hole in someone's head in order to relieve pressure to the brain from an injury. But that's relatively uncommon. And it's very distinctly different from trephination as a pseudoscientific approach from years ago. So we've talked about the fact that this is a science class. I'm just going to say that one more time. This is a science class. We're going to be talking about the mind, the body, and how they interact. And we're going to be talking about it in a lot of ways using terminology that might seem a little bit tricky at first. I'm not going to shy away from using complicated words when we talk about this stuff. So when I talk about trephination, when I talk about cyclothiamides, when I talk about see now I'm blanking on the other large words. When I talk about hypochondria, when I talk about disorders of delusion, disorders related to psychopharmacology. These aren't words that I'm going to shy away from because you guys being all online, you can just look them up if you need to. Don't be afraid to look them up. Don't be afraid to take time when thinking about what we read and spending a little bit of time trying to understand things better. This is not supposed to be an easy course, but it's supposed to be kind of interesting and kind of intriguing. Now, that said, our first chapter really talks about the beginnings. And you're going to read about a lot of stuff that's going to sound very disturbing. That's the way this works. When you study psychology, even contemporary stuff, you're going to find some things that psychologists do, some practices they engage in that you will not like and that you will resist. And I think I want to say right up front, I don't care if you like them or not. I don't care if you approve of what you see. I don't care if you think it's good, think it's bad, think it's evil. I want you to understand it. And that's the only thing I ask of you, is that you be able to, if you have criticisms and attack for everything you read about, if your criticisms are accurate, informed, and intelligent, great. If they're ignorant and reactive, then you've got a little bit of a problem. But not such a big deal right now. I'm not going to worry about that now, but I just want to say up front, it's fine. I encourage my students to disagree with me, and I encourage my students to disagree with one another as long as it's respectful and civil. So just keep that in mind when we're doing the discussions. I really like discussions where people argue. And I don't mean argue as in fight, I mean argue as in present arguments for their point of view. Present arguments for their position, present arguments that show that they've read the material and understand it, but don't agree with how to interpret it. And that's great. That's really good stuff. A few of you have been asking about the papers, and I'll talk about those more in the discussion board, and I will be posting paper assignments relatively soon. But I just want to say, the papers in a lot of ways are among the easiest things you end up doing in this class. And I don't mean that to belittle them because they're important and they're valuable, but they're also meant to be fun. They draw from personal experience, they draw from personal understanding, and they're really meant to get you to explore and think about the material rather than just recite information, recite facts. So, with all that said, I think I'm going to wrap this one up for now, and hopefully in the editing it will come out to be reasonably coherent, which is not always my strong suit. And I hope to see you guys in the discussion board. Thanks.